walking the serpentine path, following the footsteps of the ancestors, walking the serpentine path, making our way back home. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho, hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho. Following the serpentine path, Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid, and I am a student midwife, spiritual counselor, multidisciplinary artist, founder of Sage Femme Womb, and your guide on this serpentine path of life. Together, we'll dive deep into all things related to plant medicine, ancestral reconnection, intergenerational healing, womb sovereignty and bodily autonomy, rites of passage and initiation, time travel, shape-shifting, dimension hopping, the reclamation of our collective earth-based practices, and the ongoing, never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Welcome to the serpentine path where the ancestors have called us back to. Let's start at the end and find our way back home together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Serpentine Path podcast. Before we get into this awesome episode all about spirit babies, I want to share a little bit about something that we touch on in the episode, which is my offering called the Red Tent. So the Red Tent is an online women's container that I offer, which explores female initiations like all of the ones that we go deep into in this episode. The Red Tent is a 7-week rite of passage for visionary wise women who are ready to fall madly in love with the medicine of womanhood through biological re-education, spiritual re-initiation, land re-belonging, and community remembering. The doors are going to be opening for the September cohort in just a few weeks, so be sure to join my newsletter at the link down in the show notes if you want to learn more. And I'm also going to be offering a free upcoming class where we're going to be exploring the 5 physiologic initiations of womanhood that I guide women through in the Red Tent. So these 5 physiologic initiations of womanhood that I received during my time living in the jungle with my elders are birth, blood, sex, death, and rebirth. And these are the initiations that every single woman has the capacity to actually re-initiate herself through, so that she can become the kind of woman that people look at her and they say, damn, that woman, that ferociously radiant future matriarch right there is someone who seriously walks with the medicine of an elder. So that free class that I'm going to be teaching is called The Future of Matriarchy, and it's going to be held on Tuesday, October 25th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. There's going to be a lot more info about that in my upcoming newsletters, so be sure to subscribe to that link down in the show notes. All right, let's get into this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid. I am your host, and today it is such an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to welcome my guest onto the show, Danielle Sawan. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me as well. I'm really grateful to be here.
Awesome. Well, we will start with the questions that I ask all of my guests, which is if your ancestors were here with us now, which of course they always are, how would they introduce you and what role would they say that you play in your family lineage?
Mm, I love this. So the word that is coming is wild card. I have ancestors from Thailand on my father's side and European ancestors from my mother's side, which I'm less connected to, whom I'm less connected to because my mother was adopted. But my dad's Thai lineage is really, really strong within me, and I feel the deepest connection to my ancestors. But I really feel like they would say I'm the wild card, living in different places. I've probably traveled the most out of my whole family. And that's not to put myself on a pedestal, but it's just like I've been called to travel and go to different lands and also study a lot of shamanic studies and different healing, which my ancestors and pretty much everyone in my family, they just haven't gone down that path. So I would say the wild card and the healer, the intuitive. I feel that, yeah, they're proud of me for doing this healing that they didn't have access to, time, space, resources. And I can really feel their gratitude to me for going on this path of healing our lineage, for our descendants, for my descendants to come. The path has definitely not been easy, but yeah, I would say wild card suits the most.
Yeah, I I can totally relate to that. I feel like in my nuclear family, I'm 100% the wild card. I think I know my whole family is just kind of looking at me like, what the F is she doing? And I think in my younger years, it was more like out of true concern because I was like batshit crazy for a long time. And now it's kind of like, we don't really know what she's doing, but she's like found some centering and grounding and like a clear path. And so, like, we don't get it, but like, we're down with it. And then when I think about my ancestors, like, a couple generations back, I feel they're all feeling the same thing of like, we don't know what she's doing, but like we're down with it. And then when I feel into like deep ancestry, it's so much more of like, oh, this is what our peoples have always done, right? Like it's not necessarily anything that's like crazy. And she's just like tapped into what our medicine was before it was stripped away, before it was colonized out of us, before it was taken and warped and distorted in so many different facets. And so yeah, I can sometimes I feel super wild and crazy, and then sometimes I'm like, I think I'm the most normal person in my family. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that too. I feel like with the plants and the herbs, it's very embedded within Thai lineage and cooking. So there is something very ancestral and the massage and the oils that they use. And there's a lot of Thai midwifery that I haven't studied, but they use a lot of herbs. So it's interesting, yeah, to see where my lineage is from and then see where my soul feels called to study.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna definitely get into all of that. I'll offer just a little bit of an introduction as to how we know each other. So I started following you on Instagram like a while ago, like at least over a year ago. And I don't know how I got connected to your work. But I was always like, oh, this woman is like doing really beautiful work in the world. And then I guess it was maybe May, you somehow came across one of my podcast episodes that was about pregnancy loss. And I was specifically focused on like how we never support men through miscarriage and abortion, like how that's just not addressed in our Western culture. And then you started following me, and you're close friends with Britt, who was on the show a couple months ago in the episode of Men and Matriarchy, which was awesome. And so you reached out and you were like, hey, I'm really loving your work. I just found you. I'm friends with Britt. I would really love to come on and talk about spirit babies. And I was like, oh, that's perfect because I've been wanting to do a Spirit Baby episode for like almost 2 years now. Like when I was starting the podcast 2 years ago, when I was still living in the Colombian jungle with my elders, right? I was like, at some point, I want to do a Spirit Baby episode. And then I know that you connect really, really deeply with Spirit Babies and that you work with them in a very beautiful way. And I was like, oh, okay, it's time for the Spirit Baby episode. So yeah, that's a little bit about kind of how our paths have brought us together in this beautiful moment. And I want to offer you a little bit of time to share about your path, your work, your life, and what you orient to.
Mm. Yeah, first of all, that's so special just to see how spirit has been weaving us here and there and through the connections and the spirit babies, of course. So, yes, so my name is Danielle. My brand or my soul-led, womb-led, heart-led business is called Plant Spirit Empress. And I actually channeled this work and this name in 2022 after my first ever Shipibo indigenous plant dieta in the Amazon jungle of Peru. And so my work started out first with herbalism and working with plant spirits and making medicine from plants. And it was really beautiful to start out with connecting to the energetics and the spirits of plants and opening my channel to making medicines without even knowing. This was a couple of years ago in 2020, without even knowing that I would end up being on this path of midwifery and birth and rites of passage and motherhood and pregnancy and the midwives. So it's really beautiful because plants have been worked with in so many cultures and so many traditions in so many ways. And now, after having studied with different midwives, I've seen the plants come in. So it was almost like the plants were my stepping stone to this remembrance of what I feel like really I've probably had past lives for those of you that believe in past lives, but I really feel like there's this ancestral remembrance of I've done this work before. So that was one arc of my work was plant spirits, and then that turned into me studying more deeper with the womb through my womb massage with Guatemalan midwives in Guatemala, and just having all this remembrance of yeah, really tending to the womb and the thresholds. And I'll go deeper into a story when it's the right time in this episode. But I also started to connect with spirit babies, and I feel like that channel of already connecting to plant spirits. And when I say that, I mean that I can feel the energy of plants coming to me. Like if there's a certain plant that wants to work with me, like rose, I'll start really noticing rose everywhere. Like not just rose bushes, but seeing just rose appear or someone offering me a rose tincture or following the thread of different plant spirits appearing in my path. And that's the same with spirit babies. So what I also teach and share is about spirit baby communication and how to open that direct line of communication with your own spirit baby, which also leads back to the womb because everything begins there. So I also support women in birthing like their own offerings, their own businesses, and I really feel like our offerings, our passions or whatever we create, there's also a soul, which I feel is connected to the spirit babies. So even if you don't feel a call to be a mother in this lifetime, there's absolutely something meant to be birthed through you. And that just opens portals and pathways within the womb for creation. And that's what we're here for, is to create and to share beauty. So I would say like my main pillars are the plant spirits, um, like studying with midwives, spirit babies, fertility, this whole path to feminine restoration, which is connected to the healing of Mother Earth, and bringing prayers to the land, bringing offerings to sacred sites, to the waters, like really restoring this nourishing feminine energy within and without. So that's the short way of me introducing myself.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I work with plants really similarly in that, like, perfect example, we were chatting before we went to record. And as I got up to go to the bathroom, I was like, wait, I feel like she's working with Bobinsana and Coca. And I came back and asked you, and you were like, yeah, I'm gonna be dieting with Bobinsana. And I was like, and what about Coca? And you're like, oh, I love working with Coca when I'm in the valley. And I was like, yeah, the plants, they're so present and they have such an intense, crazy high level of consciousness that they're able to connect into us with, in that, like, you don't even need to be directly working with that plant in terms of like ingesting it or even doing plant baths or steams or anything. Like, just the frequency of it brings in such a beautiful medicine, working with it in all the layers. And I also think about the connection that they have with midwifery, right? Like, I'm a student midwife right now, and I'm going a very clinical route, which is not what I ever expected to be doing with midwifery. I actually didn't want to do it for a long time, and now I'm like in it, and I'm seeing a lot of beauty in it. And one of the things from the clinical path is that, there's a medicine called methergin, which you can use for hemorrhage, postpartum hemorrhages. And I learned that the plant origin of methergin is actually ergot. Ergot it was like a fungus that grew on wheat that midwives would use during labor to support women in Europe. Ergot is also the natural compound that LSD is based off of. Right. And so, like, I learn about these connections of how the plants, like, even in the most clinical setting, I'm not doing hospital birth, I'm doing home birth. But even if you were like in a hospital setting where they're like using high levels of methergin to stop postpartum hemorrhage, it's still the plant spirits weaving their ways into our lives. And when I think about the path of midwifery that I'm going down, which is really interweaving the clinical and then all of the indigenous earth-based practices that I've been steeped in over the past 5 years of my life, it really is this understanding that, like, plants are not they're what's the word? They're not, like, people have called it like crunchy, like that I'm like on the crunchy end of the spectrum with midwifery, or that I'm like crunchy, or that I'm like super out there or super even holistic or like woo woo or whatever. And I'm like, plants are the original medicine, and plants also have such an affinity for reproductive care and for women's reproductive care. And so I feel the same way when it comes to calling in the plants, when it comes to doing any of like the body work, also within like the traditional context of midwifery. A midwife would not just be someone attending births, right? They would be someone who would be working with the plants, someone who would be offering body work, abdominal massage, pelvic body work, a woman who would be working in the realms of spirit, connecting with your spirit baby and bringing in the lineage work as well of everything that's happening. And so, yeah, I love all of the work that you're doing from that context. It's also similar to mine. So, yeah, just a lot of deep respect and reverence. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I love that we're so similar. It's like being able to speak the same language, and sometimes it's really hard to articulate. Like when you ask me, what is it that I do? It's just, it's so deep and it's so woven with nature and with life itself that most of the times, pretty much all of the time, like I'm the channel and I'm creating different spaces, creating different containers to share this work and sessions, but it's really it's really led by intuition and led by the heart and something so ancestral that it's difficult to put to words. But yeah, I wanted to also add that I do a lot of preconception work that's even before conception, even before meeting the partner, even before getting pregnant, even before planning to conceive. It's actually doing that deep inner work inside, healing the inner mother, the inner child, the inner baby, just healing all of these wounds, ancestral, maternal, paternal, to prepare your vessel. So, really, the heart, the core essence of my work is And when I say this, I'm seeing like the womb and I'm seeing a pregnant womb and seeing this like almost crystalline, crystal, like pearlescent, just beautiful ball of energy that's completely pure of this golden light. So releasing like energy cords from past lovers, from traumas, from everything, and really returning to the original essence of who we are. And yeah, it's difficult to tap into when we've grown up in the society that we have grown up in and had to shut down our channels and had parents that maybe didn't support our expression. So it's really been a returning, and it's so beautiful to have the plants as allies, have our spirit babies as allies, and then be able to meet other women on the path.
Yeah, I also do a lot of work with preconception, both like personally and with clients as well. I do a lot of work both with people who have had a pregnancy loss, either miscarriage or abortion, and I tend to a lot of that death medicine, and then also like how do you come into the rebirth of like wanting to conceive again. And then I also work with a lot of people who are like, yeah, within the next maybe 2 or 3 years, I'm thinking about that. And what's been really cool in my practice is that I've started working a lot with men as well. Like for the longest time, I was only working with women, and now I'm working with their male partners. And that is so fun and so cool because the male aspect of preconception is like a whole other world that I'm understanding now. And literally just because like men are asking me, like I didn't even plan on it. Men were just like, I also want to work with her. And I'm like, oh, you do? Like that's cool. So I feel that like with that preconception portal, yeah, it's not like, oh, I want to get pregnant in 3 months. It's like, oh, I want a motherhood journey at some point, and I'm praying for that. And maybe that'll be in a year, maybe that's 3 years, maybe that's 5 years down the line. But like, how do I set up not only my like internal territory for the cultivation of life, but how do I set myself up externally as well? Like, who are the people that I want in my field? What support systems do I want? How much money do I want to be able to have? What do I want my home to look like? What do I want my days to look like? How do I want my nervous system to feel? Like, all of that calibration into the frequency of motherhood that you're desiring is also what brings the spirit baby closer, because spirit baby is like, yeah, this looks cool. This looks great. This looks dope. Earth is going to be so fun. I'm down, right? And oftentimes they'll bring to the partner in, right? They'll bring in the great community networking. They'll bring in the most beautiful home. They bring in so much abundance because they want life to be dope, right? And so I also do a lot of that preconception work. Let's get into some of the topics that we want to explore. So, one of the things that you brought up that you love speaking on is just this revitalization of the womb rites and passages that usually we would see within an intact culture, and what it looks like to rebirth these initiations in the Western context that we work in. So, what is your take on that?
Yes, it's really interesting because I think when I started to hear about rites of passage work, it was more in the menarche, like when we first get our moon. And since studying with the midwives, it's really been all of those thresholds of conception and then being pregnant and then birth and postpartum, and even any deaths that happen within your family or any, yeah, internal deaths that happen, and how do we find spaces to honor these transitions. And what I've studied with midwives, I'm also seeing now the resurgence in my circles. And I don't know if it's because I'm surrounded by all these beautiful women that are also on the traditional birth path. But for example, instead of baby showers, like we're just bringing gifts for the baby, I'm seeing more baby mama blessings. So really nourishing the mother and also giving gifts for mama and baby, but focusing on, yeah, like creating a beautiful ceremonial space for the mother with flowers, massaging her with oils, like almost like these ancient priestess rituals coming back online, where women are gathering. And when women gather, when they gather in a circle, it already creates this vortex of energy that moves, that helps to shift energy and create different spaces. So, yeah, really centering the mother or centering, focusing on one woman that's really needing support. Um, just how we're seeing sacred union ceremonies happening instead of just marriages. It's like just pretty much bringing ceremony into everything, every step of the way. Also noticing for the men, I haven't worked as much with men. This is coming up, but just seeing some friends, brothers transitioning into fatherhood and then seeing that they maybe go on a vision quest where they're in solitude for 4 days in the forest, or really being around men that are already fathers, or just yeah, having like that time alone for them to transition and really sit with the fact that they're a father now. And I'm talking about a healthy, conscious masculine, that's really accepting this rite of passage into fatherhood, which I feel like we're lacking, in this society. But yeah, also for the woman, just being nurtured by their sisters and having rites of passage during postpartum, like one of the most common things that I see and have studied with traditional midwives is having a postpartum bath with different herbs and also having a type of closing. And the midwives here in Mexico, they work with the rebozo, which is a cloth, like a cotton cloth that they actually close different energetic points. So physically, they are also closing the bones. It's the closing of the bones, cierre de carrera ceremony, closing the hips, but also it's closing down the energy of birth because women are so open as portals and they're completely entering into that spirit realm. So it's really for this type of protection after the 40 days to really seal mama and baby, like their auric fields back onto this earth. So I see that just coming back online, and I really feel like it's because of women like us and our sisters that are going to seek out these studies and traditions and traditional wisdom, and also looking for our elders. Um, to support us in these rites of passage and then bringing it back to our home countries in a really honorable way. Like, obviously, honoring the traditions that we've received this from. And yeah, naming our elders who we learned from and just not taking it as our own, but really supporting the preservation of traditional midwifery through being seeds of light that maybe we travel or maybe the midwife comes to where we are and we just open our hearts to learn another way. Instead of abandoning the mother at birth and just like, leaving, this is in like really traditional modern, like the man goes to work or like the woman takes 2 or 3 weeks off and then has to go back to work and then like the baby's in a daycare. It's like so many people say this, and I feel like we have to be conscious when we say like we're bringing back the village because it's a really nuanced topic. I feel like there's so many elements to really create that village, but I feel like we're creating like mini moments of what that village would feel like and bringing in the blessing way ceremonies, postpartum closing ceremonies. What else? I don't know if you can add to anything else. My brain is kind of
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I work a lot with women's rites of passages and initiations, and more with my work, I'm being pulled into also educating around what that looks like for the men. again, not by choice. I like never thought that I would be working with men. And what eventually happened in my life was that back in February, I started teaching a container called the Red Tent, which is based on the 5 physiologic initiations of womanhood that I received during the year and a half that I was living in the Colombian jungle with my elders. And I was working very deep with plant medicines and receiving just a lot of transmissions from the plants, from the territory, from my own ancestry, and then from my spiritual grandparents who I was adopted into their family. And essentially what came through are these 5 physiologic initiations of birth, blood, sex, death, and rebirth. And it's this spiralic path of the feminine that moves through all of these rites of passages and initiations that occur within our own body, because for the woman, our territory is internal. Right? It's our emotions, it's our relationships, it's our sexuality, it's reproduction. It's this internal world of feeling and birthing as well that's coming through. And so all of the initiations that we move through in our life happen through the territory of the female body, versus for men their territory is external. And I'm speaking like very specifically from the understanding of like the male and female mammal, right? If we take away any of the kind of like gendered culture understandings of like what is masculine, what is feminine, and just look at male and female biology of like wolves, right? Understanding that the male rites of passages are going to be all about the ability to protect and provide for the most vulnerable members of their pack, which is going to be their partner, wolves mate for life, which I'm obsessed about, and then that little baby that's coming through, or the multiple little pups that are coming through. And so the male mammal is going through rites of passages and initiations that are much more external and have a lot more to do with his capacity to provide and to protect. And so when we look at those side by side, that's a lot of the work that I'm doing with men and women now, because in the Red Tent, the female container that I taught, that was all about rites of passages and initiations for women, a lot of those women's husbands were like overhearing the calls and were like, can she please teach this for men? Like, can she teach this conversation, but like from the male perspective? Like, I want to know how to better support you as my woman. And I also want to know, like, where am I at in my own rites of passages and my own initiations? And so now I'm teaching a co-ed class that's called the Biology of Love. And it's really that I go back and forth between male biology, male reproductive system, and the understanding of how we are designed to relate, both from the biological level, but then also from the energetic level of like, how are we doing the dance of the yin and the yang and the masculine and the feminine that we hold inside of us? And so it's bringing all of that in, which is all midwifery care. Anything that we're thinking about that's like around rites of passages and initiations is the traditional role of the midwife, because within a traditional intact culture, a midwife is tending to all of life's initiations and rites of passages from womb to tomb, from birth to death, both for the men and for the women. And so like that's the work that we do. And when I think about, like blessing ways, mother baby blessings versus like a baby shower, one of my teachers, Rochelle Saliga, who I did the innate postpartum training with her last year, she talks about this a lot. She's like, how are you actually going to bless a mother? Are you just going to like get together and like celebrate her for a day and just like give her baby gifts that she doesn't need? Or are you going to get 20 women together in the kitchen and cook her all of the meals that she's going to need for her first 6 weeks postpartum so she doesn't have to cook? Are you going to get together and take all of the money that you would spend on stupid baby gifts that that baby absolutely does not need and actually create a postpartum care fund for her where she can go and get body work, where she can get acupuncture, where she can get pelvic care, right? Where she can receive like true closings, right? Like I love closing of the bones ceremonies. I'm also trained to do those. And what I love about closing of the bones is that you see it throughout so many traditions. You see La Cerrada, right, in Mexico. You see the same ceremony in Russia called Seven Locks. You see ceremonies in Ecuador, in Colombia. You see them in Morocco. You see them throughout parts of Africa where you're sealing a woman back up. And whenever I do closing ceremonies, it is so unbelievably psychedelic, both to receive and to give them. You enter into the birth field, this altered state of consciousness, the space where the DMT is being released and where the woman is leaving her body, traveling to the stars, grabbing the soul of her baby, and then bringing it back. You move there with her and then you close her back up. You bring that part of her that is still out in the cosmos back to earth. And when women don't receive that, the degree of physical struggles, right? Because the closing of the bones is physically and structurally meant to bring her body back into alignment and skeletal coherence. And so it helps with their pelvic healing, it helps with abdominal healing, diastasis recti, all of this. Emotionally, she gets clear witnessing of like this 6 week period of your early postpartum is now closed. You're no longer in that. And then from the psycho-spiritual aspect, it's you're no longer out in the ethers in the star. You're also no longer a maiden, or you're no longer a mother of just one children or two children. You're a mother now of this child, this many children, this family. You've expanded, and now you come back to earth and we close you, we hold you. Closing of the bones are also really important for pregnancy loss, right? They're important for the end of a relationship. They're important if you are like changing your job, if you're moving homes, if you're closing a chapter so that you keep all of you together. They're really helpful for sexual assault. If a woman has been sexually violated and a part of her soul has been fractured off and is like floating in the ethers and is scared to come back to her body. And so when I think about all of that, right, people wouldn't usually consider that to be like midwifery care, but that's what it is. That's the work we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. You put that perfectly as well.
Beautiful. Okay, let's talk about the spirit babies. Let's get into it. How did you first get connected to the realm of these amazing little beings?
Yeah, so I first started connecting to spirit babies around 6, 7 years ago, like my own spirit baby, because was really desiring to be a mother. And I had a partner who I don't really think he wanted babies, and I don't think he ever will. So it was almost like, why am I with this person? And I'm over here, like, so fertile, like, feeling like my children, like, wanting my babies, like, wanting my milk, my breast full of milk. And was also living on a really beautiful, powerful land in South France at the time. And just really in tune with nature, making a lot of different herbal medicines and feeling really maternal, feeling like this really slow life with nature by a river. And I just started to, yeah, imagine like I feel like I was maybe projecting onto him how much I wanted a baby, but that ended up in me intuitively connecting with this soul and starting to really like envision what it would be like to be pregnant, my belly full. Um, but I was really, really such a maiden in the sense that I was almost like demanding, like, I want to get pregnant. I want a baby. I was like 26 or 25, like really young. And I didn't have all of this knowledge that I have now. But, anyways, that kind of opened that channel of communication. I also had support from a sister at that time who was really, really connected to spirit babies. So she kind of supported me in opening the channel, which is really beautiful because that's now what I'm doing for women. I'm like supporting that channel to open and just that understanding, but in the body and in the intuition of like feeling a spirit and then inviting a spirit in and allowing the baby to come into your dreams. And I feel like it really took me a couple years to tune into the energy of my spirit baby girl because when I was with that partner, I was really feeling this energy of a spirit baby boy. And I was also working with a strong plant medicine in that time. We were doing ceremonies together. And I remember in one of the ceremonies, I literally like felt like I had given birth and that like I had a baby boy in my hands and I was just crying and I was so grateful and I felt all this masculine energy. But with that partner, I never ended up getting pregnant. So it was like it's really interesting because spirit babies really guide us to who we're meant to be with, or if we have a loss, like they also know that we were meant to experience that. And I feel like it was something that opened in my body, like almost preparing for birth or preparing for pregnancy. But yeah, it was many years later after ending that relationship and then entering the world of ayahuasca and plant dieta that it was like, okay, fully opening to the cosmos, like channeling the spirit of my baby. Like she gave me her name. I would feel like this energy of like, and now I'm going a little bit more into personal story because I guess this is what feels alive. But I was like seeing dragons and seeing the energy of her aura, like fully received her name. And I would get confirmations of seeing her name in different places, or someone would end up saying her name. Like it was really wild how much this specific baby soul guided me to where I am now, and she's still with me, guiding me. But really, once I started to really trust in myself and trust in my connection and trust in my intuitive, deep desire to be a mother, and knowing that, one day I will have my babies in my arms and be breastfeeding them. It was really that like wild imagination of my inner feminine that, yeah, supported me in this connection. Yeah, it was that like fully opening my channel. And it's the same thing with the plant spirit. It's just opening to be a clear channel to receive messages and guidance, and then trusting those messages from nature.
Yeah, I have a similar thing with the actually when I think about my whole childhood, I always had these two male spirit babies following me around before I even knew like what it was. I just always had this feeling I'm gonna have two boys since I was a kid. Don't know why. And when I was 25, I met my ex-partner and we lived together in the Colombian jungle with our elders for many years back and forth. But the first time that I visited my spiritual grandfather and when I met him, Abuelo Taita Keruin, my very first ceremony with him was really clear introduction to like my spirit babies and with my ex-partner specifically. And I had the most demanding maiden energy that I can possibly think of. When I think back on it now, being almost 30, and think about my 25-year-old self and how much pressure I was putting on myself and on my ex-partner and like our union and everything, it was like quite crazy, the things that I was doing and saying. And yeah, that energy of just like, I want my babies, I want them now, I want them in my arms, I want to be breastfeeding them. Like I had so many ceremonies where I saw like hundreds and hundreds of births that I had been through and births that other women were going through, and I felt myself pregnant and blah 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 blah. And that was like a super strong thing for my ex-partner because he was 26 at the time or like 27, and he was just like, I'm nowhere near close to being ready myself. And for a really long time, I was so angry at him for that. I was like, why aren't you ready? What do you mean? Get me pregnant now. Like that was really my energy. And now, after I went through, my own breakup with him and also actually inhibiting an implantation from occurring. I had an experience when we were living in the jungle where I knew that I had conceived because I was going through early implantation symptoms. My nipples got darker, my breasts got so swollen and so sore for immediately after ovulation. I was feeling implantation cramping. It was crazy. And feeling that spirit come in, I was like, wow, I'm nowhere near being ready to be a mother. There is zero way that I would be able to do this right now, both internally in my relationship and then also externally in terms of the fact that I was completely broke, living in the jungle, like totally not set up to like bring life forth. And it was a huge shift in my understanding of like, wow, if I really want to be a mother, I have to seriously get my shit together. I have to really transform a lot of stuff. And same, it had a big impact on my partnership. But I actually called my ex over the weekend. We were talking, we were just laughing. I was like, can you imagine if that pregnancy had actually happened and we were still living in the jungle, completely broke with a baby? Oh my God, like thank God that we didn't do that, right? We were just laughing about it because it is that shift from being in that maiden place, that demanding energy, into what does a mother actually do? A mother does what's best for her children, right? So that's kind of like my huge thing around the spirit babies. They were like totally rocking my world for a long time. And then it also showed me the way in which I was out of right order with them because there was like so much of like, I just want them to come and whatever they want, I'll give it to them, blah, 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 versus actually to be the mother in this dynamic, I have to choose this is the right moment for me in order to be the best mother for you to have the best life possible. And I get to say no, and I get to change the timeline, and I get to renegotiate whatever contract we had, right? I get to say, like, it's going to be different. So that brought me into like a lot of death medicine with the spirit babies, right? Like they brought up such that deep desire around fertility and around motherhood, but they also showed me like the true choice in the medicine that women walk with, the death medicine that we walk with in our womb of deciding like actually no, that's not going to happen. And what supported me was the plants, right? I was able to do a very early pregnancy implantation, so I never went through like a full abortion. But even that layer of choosing to end an early pregnancy has offered me so much deep understanding of how to work with the spirit babies in that realm and also how to work with women who have gone through pregnancy loss, miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth, all of that. So I know that you also work with women in the realm of abortion and miscarriage. Do you want to share about that and what brought you into that work?
Yeah, so yeah, I think what's really important to reiterate is that maiden energy, and it's interesting how we both had it at similar ages. And then to actually receive what we had been calling for and praying for. I also have gone through a womb loss, early pregnancy, sovereign womb release. And it was really interesting because, like, my spirit baby guided me to the specific place where I was meant to get pregnant, to the specific man. There were a lot of synchronicities with her name and this man, and it was a really hard pill to swallow to, yeah, to actually conceive and to be pregnant and hold a pregnancy in my womb and then need to make the decision out of safety and sovereignty and the type of lifestyle that I want to live with and the type of present partner and dream home that I desire and stability, and to choose like, okay, I was calling in this, and this was really interesting actually. I was calling in this initiation to be a mother, but I wasn't specific of initiation to be a mother and also like have a full-time pregnancy or be a single mother, etc. But it was really like my soul was desiring that initiation from maiden to mother, even if I wasn't ready to be a mother to a fully seen pregnancy, like a child, a baby coming. And I did receive that initiation, and it was really beautiful. I was held and supported by a Brazilian midwife, who I still study with. And she really supported me in those rites of passage of different stages of womanhood and different aspects of womanhood. And yeah, I did have that rite of passage to from maiden to mother. And she was like, be careful what you say, be careful of your prayers because I feel like you're actually going to be pregnant. And like 2 weeks later, I was, and it was so beautiful and I was so happy. But the one aspect that I didn't um, take too much caution in was choosing the right partner. And for me personally, I really desire to be with a present man, a present father. And that's a non-negotiable for me. And I know so many women, co-parent or they're single mothers, and I think that's so beautiful. But for me, this is not the timeline that I wanted. And in this moment, I was really, really unsupported and like really, really, financially unstable and just in a foreign country and with this man that didn't want to raise a baby with me. And it was really a big lesson in discernment of how I choose to create with my life force energy, and that, calling in a baby is not a light thing. And I feel like these souls that are coming are really asking for present parents and really true union, and for them to fully embody the light that they're here to be and the medicine. And that really requires clearing and purging and preparing our bodies. And it's the same if you go into a plant dieta, you have to purge and clear and sacrifice and give up certain things like certain addictions, certain habits to allow this plant spirit to enter. And it's the same a lot to allow this baby spirit to enter. And of course, that's not the case for everyone, but I really feel like, you know, for us that are on this path, and it's not to put us on a pedestal, but this path of bringing this higher consciousness and bringing this new earth and like being with the land, being with the prayers, like really bringing back the ancestral, but in like this also like futuristic way. Um, that's what the path asks. And so yeah, through my own initiation, um, and also supporting myself in a sovereign abortion, I I was just really initiated into these deep dark waters. And what I realized, because I just had my closing of the bones 2 years later here in Mexico, because it was a desire. I'm very stubborn, so it was a desire of mine to be with the traditional midwife of these lands and receive that postpartum ritual. I finally did it after 2 years, so it's never too late. And I realized that my spirit baby daughter, who actually was in my womb, gave me that initiation into responsibility. And now, like, there's no way in hell that I would be like, I've calmed down, even though I deeply desire to have a baby. And even if I was in a partnership right now, like, I would still have more respect for the man and the person that I'm with so they can really process fatherhood and that we can call in the soul together. Because basically what I had done, I like called in the soul without really asking permission from like the man I was with. And I finally come to that forgiveness, because he was also very in tune to um plants and shamanism and other realms, and he was actually angry at me and said like you kind of did this without my consent. And in my mind, I was always thinking, well, no, like it's also your fault and just blaming him. But really, now looking back, if I'm holding full self accountability, it's that I actually did call in the spirit so deeply. I was praying and I was like not caring about, um, I didn't really care about the man I was with. Like I had been with him for not so long, and I wasn't fully in love with him, but I had this desire to be a mother, and he was there, and he was my lover, and there was this energy of spirit babies. There were like these baby birds visiting, and it was so magical. I was seeing rainbows and dragonflies, and I just knew she was coming. Like even a month before, I was starting to feel nausea and starting to feel like as if I was pregnant. And I would really say, and this is just coming through. I know you asked about, yeah, my initiations and holding women, but yeah, it's really this responsibility and being conscious of bringing life into the world in a really good way, in a really beautiful way, and like a prayer. And I feel like, um, I was actually conceived in that way with my parents, and I saw this in an ayahuasca ceremony, like full love, full calling in, like full desire. And for me, it wasn't enough for it to only come from my side, for my specific baby and my specific like soul path. And yeah, through going through this initiation of, I actually desired so much to be a mother. I had no, it was not a problem with fertility, but it was like the energy of that relationship wasn't the most fertile. And to have to make that choice. And also my spirit baby supported me and guided me. And she would appear in my dreams, and I just know, and this is what I also share, is that these babies come to teach us, and it's medicine, like they serve as medicine, and they're so wise, so they even know if they're coming and they're not going to fully make it to this earth plane. And I know that's sometimes hard for us to wrap around, and my heart goes out to women that have had like given birth and then lost their baby. And yeah, it's so painful and so difficult. And it took me a long time to come out of it. But that connection to my spirit baby and having that communication with her over the span of like 7 years supported me in, yeah, allowing that initiation to happen and also honoring it as part of life, part of my journey, part of my soul's journey. And that even when I talk about it, like I sometimes forget that happened to me because like my body, like my cells have transformed so much through like all the different ceremonies, Tamascal, different rites of passage that I've had, and the plants and ayahuasca. It's like in my body, my womb has been able to release like that trauma. But of course, there's still grief in the heart when my bleed is coming, but it's more coming from that desire to still be a mother. And so, in all those realms, I support women with all the grief of pregnancy, unseen pregnancies, loss, or even having to make the decision to release a pregnancy. And then, how do you deal with that after? Because you're still in a postpartum. And like even for women that have full-term pregnancies, the postpartum is like at least like 1 to 2 years, if not the whole life. So like even with abortion or a miscarriage, the postpartum period is the same because the body still like the body still feels like you're pregnant, even if, you had an early release at like 7 weeks or 10 weeks. It's like the body still kind of goes through that fit. This is what I learned from my midwife is the body still feels like it's like going to go into a full-term pregnancy, and it just takes a while for the body to switch and for the psyche as well. So it's like you still have to go to that full circle end, and then after there's a postpartum. So there's a lot of women that I noticed that they may have had an abortion or a loss, and they've completely disregarded it and just moved on with their life. And it's just hidden there inside their womb, like a little thorn that they've just continued to live with until they're in a space like a session or what I offer, just like being in the space. Usually women come to me and I actually had like five abort or I had this happen and they haven't dealt with it many years later. So yeah, I know you probably resonate that women just like find you in that space. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'll speak to like two things of what you just said. The first is like when I look at the framework that I teach women around the five physiologic initiations of womanhood, of birth, blood, sex, death, and rebirth, when we're not properly initiated into a mature adult expression of sexuality, we carry so many really painful wounds with masculinity and with the partners that we end up choosing. And because we don't have clear rites of passages and initiations for men or for women in our modern culture, for women, it's quite hard for us to learn how to recognize what kind of a man is actually ready for serious commitment. And a lot of the times, it actually has nothing to do with the woman that he is with currently. It has to do with where he's at in his life. And I remember having a conversation with my ex-partner who I desperately wanted to get pregnant with, and who also expressed wanting to have a baby with me. But, like, there was a lot going on there. But the reality of like where he was in his life, there was like zero way that he was ready to make like that level of a commitment. And I said to him at one point, I was like, if you were at a point in your life where you felt super stable and clear and grounded with your purpose, with your path of service, with your financial resourcing, with your external territory, I think that you would have been 100% down to have a baby. Like you would have been ready for that level of commitment, but you're not there. And so you're not going to be ready for that level of commitment anytime soon until you figure it out. And he was like, oh, yeah, 100%. That is 100% what was happening. That's 100% where I'm at, what I'm trying to build. Like, and you'll talk to a lot of men about this and you'll ask them, what is it that you need to become a father? In you personally, not relationally, but personally, what do you need? And it's so different from what the woman needs from things. And so when we're not taught to be able to recognize male initiations as very different from female initiations, we get super frustrated with partners like when they're for some reason not ready to have a baby, right? And then there is a very intense shadow side of female fertility, and I would say a biological understanding that like life wants to move forward, and what our hormones are doing, especially during ovulation, is saying like continue the species forward. And the shadow side of that is that we don't consider our male partners and we don't consider their initiation into fatherhood. And we don't consider the fact that most men's, like, one of their biggest fears is getting forced into fatherhood or like manipulated into fatherhood, getting trapped into fatherhood. Which, what I would say to men is like, well, don't be having sex with a woman that you wouldn't want to have a baby with. Same with women. Like that was a big transition that happened for me, was the understanding of I really don't want to be having sex with anyone who I can't look at and see not only would I want him to be a father, but I know he wants to be a father. I know he's ready to be a father, and I know that we would make really amazing parents together and that we have a solid union, right? Like anything less than that, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm good to stay celibate and to really protect my womb and to protect that portal of creation, because you cannot play games with this kind of stuff. The consequences are literally a human life, right? And your life too. Like it is the most important decision that you can possibly make to become a parent, and who you're going to do it with. And I think that made an energy that I was running around with, that you were running around with, that so many women run around with. I have seen those consequences in friends. I have seen those consequences in both the men and the women who are the result of that like intense, obsessive, I want to become a mother now energy. And it can get really ugly. It can get really, really ugly. And I don't think that any of the spirit babies really want that. They're choosing whatever timeline they're coming in on. They're choosing their parents, of course. But I think that they really do want like stable families, stable unions, people who really love one another, respect one another, are kind to one another, and who are really deeply desiring to bring that forth. And then the other thing, as you were speaking to it kind of at the end around like tending to women, yeah, I mean, I have women who will come to me. I have one woman who I'm working with who had a miscarriage 2 decades ago. And it wasn't until like February when she first found me and reached out that and she didn't even come to me to address that miscarriage. She came to me to address something else. And what our work has been understanding, wow, for 2 decades, you've been walking around with this miscarriage that you never told anyone about, right? I'll also have a lot of women who will come to me who are going through a miscarriage of a really desired pregnancy. And then you find out that they had an abortion a couple of years before and they're still deeply ashamed of it and they never did any processing around it. And it had a big impact on the union and like the whole relational dynamic. I have women who, I mean, for over a decade at this point, women who have been coming to me with pregnancy loss. And I've also been able to see pregnancy loss since I was very young, of knowing when women are pregnant and then knowing that they miscarried the baby, even if they haven't told me specifically. Like, you just start tuning into it, right? That frequency of loss and the pain around it and the unseen grief and the lack of witnessing. Like, once you know it, it's so clear to recognize it in another woman, both when you've just worked with a lot of women who have gone through that, but also in yourself, if you've gone through that initiation. It's like how you can see women who have been sexually abused if you've gone through a lot of sexual abuse, right? Like, it's the same thing. You feel into it. Um, and it's really, really important that those women receive witnessing, because within an intact culture, every single pregnancy would be honored as a birth, and it would be honored with a cohesive postpartum, even if the pregnancy didn't end in a living child, right? So that's a big part of midwifery care that I'm deeply devoted to, and that I know you're deeply devoted to, of like, this death medicine has to be honored, because this is like half of all pregnancies end in some kind of loss. And so if half of them are ending in loss and we're not tending to that, half of all women who have gone through a pregnancy are walking around with like gaping wounds. And also their male partners are walking around with gaping wounds, and no one is being tended to. And so I think that's like a huge gap in all realms of midwifery care at this point in time, of really being able to sit with that level of heaviness and death and sadness and grief, and not run away from it.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were saying that, I was feeling, all the women's ancestors, like how many of our mothers or grandmothers or great mothers went through loss. And I recently found out just through asking questions and studying, since deepening on this path of birth. And I asked my aunt, so my Thai grandmother had actually, she had 10 pregnancies, um, but had eight full-term babies. And then I found out a couple of years ago that she had had two miscarriages. And I can really see, like, just the pain in her body. And she always had a pain in her back. And in her last year of life, like, I forget which organ, but it was one of her organs started to bleed out. And it was actually when I was in Guatemala doing the Mayan womb massage that I was like, oh shit, like my grandmother is transitioning. Like I can feel her leaving as I'm like healing my womb and separating from this partner and just really going deep into, yeah, the cells and the ancestry. And it was really beautiful because I was able to have a video call with her and I was telling my aunts to like put their hands on her womb and have her to connect to her womb. And so now it just makes so much sense that obviously she had a really difficult life in growing up in poverty, but then moved to California. But just like carrying that her whole life and that not being seen because there was no time. Like she was having babies, then working as a seamstress, getting paid like 5 cents an hour in Thailand, and then to lose a baby. Like I don't even know if she like there were moments I think she didn't even realize that she was pregnant. And I've heard this happen to women that they didn't realize they were 5, 6 months pregnant, and I still don't understand that. But it's just, I think it's like being so disconnected from our bodies and our womb. And yeah, there's so much. Now as we're speaking, I'm realizing, wow, this is so potent because the women that find this, like there's just so much healing that needs to be done, so much witnessing for the entire feminine and masculine collective and the planet. And it's huge work.
Yeah, definitely. My paternal grandmother, so my dad's mother, went through a lot of pregnancy loss. She went through a lot of miscarriages. She, I believe, had a stillbirth, and then she also lost a child when he was 2 years old. And there was like huge blocks for me around motherhood for a long time, starting at like, I think I was 23 or something for like 2 years. I was like really aggressively like, I will never become a mother for a couple of reasons. One was I have a very intense history of sexual abuse, and so there was just so much like pain and violence and darkness in my womb space that my body was holding on to from the amount of abuse I had been through. And so there was like that block with my womb and like believing that my womb could create anything beautiful. And then there was also the block of my grandmother and the amount of pain that she went through with pregnancy loss and with losing children that I was just like, I can't do that. Like, I just cannot do that. Like, there's no way, you know? And when I think about pregnancy loss, it's a reality. Like, I have already tended to a lot of women who have moved through either stillbirths or second trimester loss, early first trimester loss, abortion, all of that. But like when I just think about the lack of tending that my grandmother received, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that there was so much pain still being held because there was no ceremonial tending. Whereas within an intact culture, it's still always going to be heart-wrenching to lose a pregnancy. But at least if there's some degree of witnessing and care and reflection and tending and acknowledgement of that woman, right? Like when you ask grandmothers in the jungle, like, how many children do you have? A lot of the time they'll say, I have, this many living and this many angels in the sky, in the stars. That's how they'll speak about it. They'll say, like, I have these living children and I have my angel children, right? Like they acknowledge that. That's such a different way of like how we go about just ignoring and diminishing the reality of the lives of these beings that came forth, that were in our wombs, that didn't make it to earth, but they did because they were in our bodies, right? Like their contract was that for whatever reason, and they teach us all these beautiful things. And so to acknowledge that truth, right, of like who your angels are that are still guiding you, tending you, orienting you, blessing you, right? Like they're so powerful. So, yeah, I gotta like collect myself. I'll let you take over.
Yeah, just honoring your tears, sister. Like feel the power of all the women that you've held and supported and all the women that will be coming, all the tears. Like there's so much that, yeah, this is why I love studying with indigenous cultures is like the way that they're connected to the spirit realms as if it's part of everyday life. And for me, I feel so at home in that. I feel like I almost live in that way that sometimes everyday reality is really hard for me because it's also like you like being able to see if a woman has had loss, having just met them after 5 minutes, it's like you can feel that. And yeah, I will say that what I've witnessed in myself and what I've witnessed in other sisters is that after like going through that type of initiation into a loss from our own womb, it really propels us into this timeline of like getting our shit together or like creating that thing we need to create or like moving like waking up like fully to the feminine power that lies within us and that maturity and that presence that is needed to tend to our bodies and our wombs as like living altars of life force. And it can be really hard. And that's why the grief is so important and to like continuously tend. Like for me, every bleed that comes, it's still that maiden is like, why am I not pregnant? Where's my partner? But I have that integrated in my body because that initiation was such a shock. It was so strong to go through that and to have to like pick up the pieces of myself after that. Um, that there's like this inner older sister, like inner grandmother that's like, there's a reason why this timeline isn't here. And like patience, patience, waiting, preparing, and that it feels like a whole lifetime and it feels like forever. But I'm really so grateful to my spirit baby daughter for like bringing me on this path. And I also like it brought me on that path of studying with more midwives and like really integrating that into my work. And I just know that it was meant to be a part of my path. Like there's no way I could hold women to the depths that I can hold them without going through that initiation. Because even when I was in my maiden and I would see, oh, someone like had a miscarriage, like I wouldn't understand like why are they so sad? And like I feel like that's just something that you can't understand unless having viscerally lived through it. And it's also not to like shame anyone, but just to witness that wound, like that feminine wound of judging other women or just like not being deeply empathic and emotional. It's like shutting off our emotions that we can't tune into like the pain that, yeah, a sister may be grieving or a bereaved mother may be feeling. Like, I think, yeah, the stillborn or losing a baby after birth, that's a whole nother level. I can't even imagine the pain. Like, I feel like, yeah, the abortion miscarriage, it's like a different level. It's such a strong pain, but then like actually seeing your baby or like physically, I can't even imagine that. And my heart goes out to all women that have experienced that.
One, for me, when I decided to have very early pregnancy implantation inhibition to like stop myself from implanting in the 2 weeks between like ovulation and a missed period, the reorientation that happened in my life in the months after that was like so extreme frequency of like get your shit together, right? Like my relationship ended. I was completely broke. I had to move back home with my parents. I had to get a job at a restaurant for a whole year to just save up like crazy. I decided that I was going to go to midwifery school. I moved across the country. I decided to go all in with my business and start teaching and to take on a lot more one-on-one clients. Like it was really that frequency of like, oh, you want to be a mother? Prove it. Prove that you actually have any shred of capacity to be responsible for yourself, first and foremost. Like, what business do you have trying to call in a life right now when your life looks like this? I'm so grateful to that spirit baby for getting my shit together. I mean, I did it for myself, but like the frequency that they brought in, getting my shit together, I'm so much better for it. So thank God. And I offer that to women a lot of the time of just kind of like, this is an opportunity. Like, there is so, you birthed something. What is it that you're going to be tending to with it, right? Because when we live in a culture that does not actually honor death and that just wants to totally brush that to the side and have women get over it, it's a similar frequency that you'll see with women telling other women after a sexual assault to just get over it, right? And the pain of that, of like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, my soul has been ripped apart into 1,000 million pieces, but yeah, I'll just get over it. There's no getting over it. There's no going back. There's no there's no traveling back through the portal. Like, you just are in an entirely different timeline. And it's one that happened through the portal of your body, right? Like, it is so intimate, it is so painful, it is so vulnerable, and it's so sacred to be able to really hold, like, this happened to my body, my flesh, my blood, my bones. Like, it is holding the memory of what this experience was. And that's why we do the work that we do. That's why you tend to women in this way. That's why I tend to women in this way, so that those kinds of comments ideally stop happening, right? And it requires such a shift in our culture to bring this up from the darkness and to be able to sit with death in a way that's reverent and also not in a way that is like too black and white of like it's a horrible thing. Like, it is a horrible thing, and also what beauty comes from this as well. Like, how do you come from the death into the rebirth? Because that's also the medicine. That's also what you get to pour out into the world. That's what your womb birthed. through this loss. Like there is so much fertility still. That's what I always try to remind women, like this is a fertile time for you. There is so much life coming from this. And so how do we honor the death while also honoring the fertility, the rebirth, the vitality, the health that your body is designed to orient to when it's truly witnessed and held in that experience? Oh, okay. I feel, yeah, we're at the point where we could talk forever. And so I think it's good to wrap up. I want to give you space to share any closing thoughts and also how people can connect with you, how they can work with you, how they can be in your field.
Yeah, so last ways to work with me, I am on Instagram, Plant Spirit Empress. I currently don't have a website, but feel free to message me in the DMs or just tune into my world through that platform. And I'm offering one-on-one spirit baby womb sessions where we go deep into all of this and also can tune into the communication with your spirit baby. I do a lot of dream medicine work, like going into working with our dreams and how to pay more attention to our dreams and also receiving messages from spirit babies in our dreams. And also I offer mentorships and yeah, this is all stuff that you can tune into my field, weave in, feel my medicine, and we can talk about all of this and see how I can support you for the women listening or for the men that feel drawn. I haven't worked that much with men, but I'm also calling that in and opening that space up. Um, and I'll probably be offering some group mentorships in the fall, maybe August, September. But yeah, just really staying connected through Instagram. It's my main platform. It's like for me, it's like my living altar. And yeah, and that's about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for your work, for your path, for everything that you do. It's been such a pleasure to share. Thank you so much.